In the Midwest, many fruit and vegetable crops rely on pollinators for production. The vast majority of insect pollinators are bees, with honeybees and bumblebees being the most impactful and well known because they are generalists, meaning they aren't too picky about what they pollinate. But supporting pollinators on an agricultural site can take some thought. You might be asking, which plant species will help pollinators on your site thrive? And how can you manage pests without harming pollinator communities? Most specialty crops begin as flowers, and even crops like asparagus and potatoes bloom each year and offer resources to pollinators, like pollen and nectar. Wild and native bees also play a key role in crop pollination, but many are specialists, relying on just one or two types of plants for food. Wild bees include bees like longhorn bees, mason bees, mining bees, leafcutter bees, carpenter bees, and sweat bees. When temperatures begin to warm up in the spring, perennial plants begin to grow again, and pollinators gradually emerge from their overwintering sites. Because fruit crops bloom at various times, and annual crops like pumpkins aren't planted until spring and often don't flower until May or later, there can be early season food gaps, or dry spells. Thus, providing water and early blooming plants can help support pollinators as they begin to emerge in the spring. Dry spells can also occur after bloom on farms that grow crops with distinct short bloom windows, like apples and many other fruit crops. That's why it can be helpful to augment or work with your farm's landscape to cultivate pollinator habitat that can provide food when crops are not in bloom. Let's discuss this further. There are many ways to approach enhancing pollinator habitat. Around cropland, this might look like planting buffer strips with intentionally selected species of plants. Mowing selectively, or avoiding it during key times, can also allow plants to bloom and support pollinators. These approaches, along with intercropping flowering plants within or around crop rows, can help transform parts of the agricultural landscape into productive pollinator habitat. Keep in mind, the amount of land needed to improve pollination or support pollinator ecology will vary depending on the site and your specific goals. For perennial fruit crops that have a vegetative aisle in between plant rows, cover crops may be planted in the aisle region or under your main crops within planting rows to support pollinators. However, because cover crops and weeds can attract insect pollinators where crops are potentially being sprayed with pesticides, they can essentially act as a trap that ends up harming pollinators. So how can you balance your goals of supporting pollinators without accidentally causing them harm? Balancing pest management with pollinator protection starts with learning about pest life cycles, identifying which pests threaten specific crops, and recognizing pollinator sensitivity to different pesticides. Integrated Pest Management, or IPM, is about managing pests with a balanced approach. It aims to prevent economic losses while also protecting the long-term health of your crops. The goal is to take action when it's really needed, and in a way that avoids putting extra stress on your crops. That's IPM in a nutshell. But when protecting pollinators is a key part of the plan, it's sometimes called Integrated Pollinator and Pest Management, or IPPM. Same idea, just with pollinators in the spotlight. So how can you actually put this into practice? Let's walk through some steps growers can take to manage pests while keeping pollinators safe. Just remember, these are general guidelines, and every site is a little different, including its local insect populations, pest pressures, cropping goals, and pesticide products used. Remember to always refer to a pesticide's label for any conventional or organic pesticide product you apply when considering the following points. Avoid spraying when the risk of drift is high. For example, spray when winds are below 10 miles per hour. Apply insecticides during times of day when pollinators are not active. This is usually before dawn and after dusk. Additionally, choose pesticides with lower residual toxicity when possible. Apply pesticides with a low pressure or low drift spray or nozzle. These are usually nozzles that put out a larger, heavier droplet size. When main crops, cover crops, or even weeds are in bloom, avoid applying insecticides that could harm pollinators. Even bee-safe labeled pesticides can have unintended impacts and should be avoided when possible. Know where nesting areas are on site and protect them. Keep in mind that many pesticides can leach into the soil and could impact ground nesting bees when present. Growers who manage their own honeybee colonies can also benefit from these practices, alongside the additional steps needed to maintain healthy hives in an agricultural setting. Remember, pollinators are one type of beneficial insect, and other beneficial insects, like predators and parasitoid populations, can also improve from these practices we talked about in this video. If you're not sure where to start with this process, we recommend taking it one step at a time. Explore and document what's present on your growing site and nearby. Get to know your crops, pollinators, pests, and how they relate with one another. Choose practices that seem appealing and doable to you, and take time to evaluate the process along the way. Well, that's the buzz. Thanks for joining the University of Minnesota in this video. We'll see you next time.